Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave, waking up for an extra early Friday morning over here from a nice and bright and sunny Helsinki, Finland. I would like to take a second to wish you the best, and the happiest, and it's in the most sincere way possible because it's almost the weekend time, and it means absolutely fucking nothing if you're a trader of cryptocurrencies, as it's no rest for the wicked, and 24/7 markets going to be looking very, 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 very interesting, with particular interest with today's closure for not just the daily, but also CMEs, weeklies, and then also obviously on Sunday, the closure for spot price action for Bitcoin. Anyways, we'll look at traditional markets again today as well. This is a completely fresh look for myself on the charts today. And let's take a look at the Krown Trading application, which can be found at app.krowntrading.net. Before I do that, I am recording. Nice, it's working. Okay, so that's good. And it looks like the microphone's working as well. So we're off to a good start today. Let me just make sure one other thing is good to go over here. All right, test one, test two. Okay, we're good to fucking go, baby. That sounds good to me. All right, nice. Good morning. Hey, wake up, motherfuckers. All right, so let's see. What do we have over here? Open interest still hanging up above 2.3 million. Sorry, 2.3 billion with a B, and that is still kind of leading up from yesterday to today, and this has been building up over the last few days actually during the trading week that we had, as open interest does go up while Bitcoin price action also going up as well. However, Bitcoin has not broken any long-term ranges to the upside at the same time, just the short and medium-term time frame ranges, that 11,400-ish region, which did initiate that test up to our topside liquid zone between about 11.9 and 12,000-ish region, which is kind of where Bitcoin is, or sorry, hanging out last night while sleeping, I guess. So that does still provide efficacy to this current move and does still formulate the bias, as we do see open interest essentially moving in the same direction as price action while volatility is increasing. All three of those things need to be combined together and would suggest that still the bias boner remains to the upside. Looking at Bitcoin dominance, we have more or less stayed around the 61% region. So alts are getting, or sorry, well, from yesterday to today, we stayed around this region. So alts are kind of, not really nothing did anything in the last 24-hour session. But the interplay that we're seeing right now during this phase of the cycle, which is contrary to what we've seen over the past couple years during this last market cycle, is that alts are now moving with Bitcoin versus USD. But when Bitcoin ranges, alts will actually gain versus the Bitcoin pairing. As it ranges within, more recently the 11,500 to where we are right now. So that is essentially saying that the overall market is in rotations, and that is allowing, nice and healthy behavior. For what it's worth, you can never really get too deep into that. And of course, price action does come first. But looking at the fear and greed index, still hanging around the 70s, which is a little bit on the higher side. We are certainly the highest that we've seen in the last few months. Going over to our data tab right here, we can see that that fear and greed really has not even been anywhere near the greedy zone for, really most of 2020 actually, and it's not until recently where we've actually been spending some time within this region. Now, the unfortunate part with this is that we actually don't, since we've only been recording this data since late May, we don't have too much history to provide onto this. But as time goes on, we'll record more and more, and actually you can find the chart that is being pulled from by just Googling it. It's actually a relatively simple chart, so I don't think that they fuck it up, and that's really all that it has to be. The global funding rate is very interesting right here too. It's literally 0.01%, which is par for the course. That's nothing. It really pretty much doesn't add any advantage or disadvantage to holding long contracts right now. In fact, it would be an advantage just because you're not really paying any major rate. It doesn't even get big until it's above 0.1. And I saw a few questions the last few days asking, hey, Krown, or whoever, or if I'm trading like XYZ fucking shitcoin, does that same sort of knowledge for the funding rate apply? No, absolutely not. And it's only relevant to Bitcoin. I can't verify for other altcoins because I just don't watch them, and I imagine that it would be different because they're just going to be a lot less liquid, and so there's going to be a bigger interplay between the difference between the futures trading on it, or the perps, or whatever the fuck you are trading with that, and then the index price, which those can vary a lot, especially for all alts as they get quite bifurcated. But looking at Bitcoin, anywhere above 0.1 is consideration, but even that's like not too crazy. That would imply that if you're holding about $1 million in contract position, you're paying 5,000, 6,000 ish per day to hold that position, which is, it's a consideration, but it's not crazy, especially if you're holding $1 million in contract position. But above there is when it does start to eat into it every day, and as you can see right now, we're really nowhere near that. So this move still does look like continuation to me, just from looking at the underlying market dynamics, which we've referenced right here. Not even looking at price action. Obviously, price action matters most, and I put the foremost importance on it. So at the end of the day, that was all take a backseat to what we're about to talk to you right now, and we will start off with Bitcoin just because it is rather interesting right here, and we'll pull up the same chart that we've been referencing the last couple of days. Bitcoin made another move into the blue box territory. That was essentially the targeted region after taking out this area from a couple days ago above 11,420. So we got that move, and now the real question that I'm sure a lot of people have is it done now, or what now? What now, spoon? Where's my spoon, bro? Anyways, looking at the 4 hour, this does look like reaccumulation, and I think that this chart right here, while we've seen this quite often on Bitcoin, where we get these very nasty dumps that get absolutely no follow through and then just float on to the upside. And it works for both the upside and the downside. But, we saw this over the weekend. We said sideways above this region is more or less steady, more or less constructive, and going to lead up for another test of 12,000 very likely. And that's what we've gotten pretty much thus far, not to sound arrogant in that way, but to kind of outlay what the next point I want to make is. This chart right here, while it is kind of par for the course on Bitcoin, I would argue that this chart is just significantly more easy to read. And this is a CME chart, and I'm sure that divergences are building. Yes, indeed they are. We will be building bearish divergence here, but I don't believe that a local high has been confirmed just yet, or at least if it does imply some downside, I'd be looking for another move back down to the 11,750 pivot right here, which is probably only relevant, or it is relevant from a fib perspective. But let me see where I'm pulling this from first. Yeah, it's the ultimate high to the ultimate low of the last, of the last cycle from 3,100 to 14,000. So that is very much relevant, and we'll have higher term time frame implications. So as long as Bitcoin essentially builds a base above that, it looks more or less good to me over the long term. And I want to put the emphasis again on the weekly for CMEs, because it will be closing later tonight, and this is continuation as far as I'm concerned. With realistically looking somewhere around 12,500 over the next few weeks is the main way that I read this chart. It looks like a clear breakout out of the last trend, which was broken, which was broken 2 weeks ago by taking out February 2020 high right here. So to me, very likely does move up to the top side of the weekly range, which is basically the mid 12,000s, which would align with our next sort of area of interest for spot price action in the low 12,000s, as there is about a $200 premium on price action from CME futures to spot, and that would kind of align with this area right here between about somewhere around like 12,300ish region. So overall, the reason why I do want to focus once again on CMEs here is because if we do go to our secondary chart and check out its kind of interplay with the Bollinger Bands, I think that this really does kind of set in the long-term bias here, or at least the bias from a weekly perspective. As last week we did get our first closure, let's go back to CMEs. There we go. We got our first closure above the top side Bollinger Band for the first time since the early 2019 run, which was all the way from 5,000 to 14,000. And today we're gonna have a chance to both open and close our first weekly dildo above it as well, which would essentially say that yes, we are confirming that we are in the process of trending. And again, I'd realistically be looking for like a medium-term target to be initiated towards the mid 12,000s, probably a short-term pullback from there, and then we'll come back and reanalyze the size. But overall, that would be breaking. That would obviously imply a breakage as well for spot price action, which right here you can see just a very, very rudimentary chart. It would obviously bring spot above and close it above the top side Bollinger Band, which we did not get last week on spot, and this is why CMEs, I do think, hold a little bit more weight. They just seem to lie less. But looking at this area right here, which spot has still not taken out the July highs of 2019, or of course the area that Bitcoin's been getting rejected from, going all the way back to January 2018. So this is almost 3 years running now, and I guess I have it on this chart over here, so we'll go back to it. But it would imply a breakage above this region, which is the same region that Bitcoin's been getting rejected at. It's also the 0.5 fib here, if you're looking at a bullish retracement. And then more importantly, it would imply that we have a massive change in behavior. This is also verified by the volume profile, which falls off a fucking cliff above this region. In fact, we closed just at like the last relatively higher value node right here. It's not a high value node in the context of like the last couple of years down around here, obviously. But to put this in perspective, if you think things are volatile right now, it's going to get, several degrees more volatile if Bitcoin does actually close this next weekly dildo officially above this liquid, or anywhere in this liquid zone here or higher is fine. Anywhere above 11,600, especially 11,500, there's been a little bit of fuckery in that region, so I'd like to see, obviously more is better at this point, but it would imply that your next fib that you'd be looking at to the upside would be around 13,500, so that would be kind of like the more long-term target as opposed to the next medium-term target in the $12,500 region if that condition is met. But let's go down to the lower-term timeframes now and make sure that and just kind of talk about points contingency here, because at the end of the day, while things are looking like they're shaping up for a very nice and efficacious, or sorry, not efficacious, but relevant weekly closures here. Again, judging today's price action, always, as always, as a trader, need to be having levels that make sense for change around that sort of bias. And it's basically the same thing as yesterday, actually. We can actually move this liquid zone, or it wasn't a liquid zone, but we can just show the liquid zone right here. And I'd use this as a short-term and medium-term pivot. As long as Bitcoin's above this area right here, that's obviously, gonna take care of the weekly. That is pretty much right around 11,500-ish region. And I really have no reason to be medium-term or long-term, even looking at this as anything but. Well, I shouldn't finish that sentence, but what I should say is that, my bias is essentially to the upside on the short, medium, and higher term timeframes as long as we're above 11,500. It's not to say that it can't come back down below there. It's just my bias doesn't really change until we actually break this area, which would drive a medium term timeframe move back down to the lower side liquid zone right here, very likely, with probably a bounce along the way at the point of control, which is 11,150-ish region. Wouldn't actually mind a move down there over the weekend to wash out some more over leveraged longs once again. It seems like that's the time to do it, as you saw Saturday last weekend. But overall, my long-term bias does not change at all whatsoever for Bitcoin, as long as Bitcoin is closing, especially 4-hour dildos above 10,900 right here, the bottom side liquid zone of the range. So this being the range between 11,000, basically like 10,900 and 12,000, we'll call it. So 11,000 and 12,000. And as long as Bitcoin is just kind of moving within this range, I look at it as more or less healthy price action, putting in some sideways basing before giving a legitimate try above 12,000. So if Bitcoin did break 10,900 to the downside, I would be looking at this as at the very least likely to propel another $1,000 move to the downside, somewhere around 98 to 9,900. That probably does fill the CME gap, which yes, it is a gap, but it is a professional gap at the same time. And that's not the same thing as what people typically reference. And unfortunately, these things have become memes in the market as, they just get perverted to fit the narrative of whoever is speaking or whoever is analyzing it, like their bias, which we all do, obviously, and it's one of the big things to try to be as aware as possible of your own biases, and I definitely do it myself. But there's just like some very interesting theories that maybe I'm just not familiar with them, but it's very much contrary to my experience. I'll put it that way. Anyways, looking at this area right here. So wait. Yes, let's talk about the 4-hour a little bit more. So is 4-hour bearish divergence forming here? Well, actually, no, it's not. This is looking like it's probably going to wedge itself into an ascending triangle on the 4-hour RSI. There's not even divergence there to begin with. I saw someone calling out hidden bearish. There's no such thing as hidden bearish divergence for one in the context of an uptrend. So that's just, well, by definition cannot be correct. To me, this just looks like a reaccumulation after putting in a nice little base right here and getting ready for another try towards 12,000. Any sort of a 4-hour dildo closure above 12,000 and, How long does it take to hit that next target at like 12.3-ish region? I don't know, but I'd be looking for a move towards there, and that'd set it up for an extremely healthy closure coming into the weekly closure later today. So, or for CMEs, obviously spot again is on Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Looking at momentum oscillators, we do see that they are pretty fucking cooked up here. We see 4-hour Stochs still up, but they are still gaining momentum to the upside. And at the end of the day, the trend is your friend, and the trend is up. Some people are probably going to call this cup and handle as well. You could make the argument for it, yes, but the way to play is essentially the same. It's not just because it's not just because I would identify this as a cup and handle that I would just immediately say, oh, it's definitely going up. No, I've seen every fucking pattern breakout every goddamn which way. That's why the interaction between price action and just these very simple tools like support and resistance, which does make up these liquid zones and order blocks, essentially denotes an actual breakage of it. And then we could use a measured move for it, some sort of a targeted region, which, if I had to eyeball it right here, it's probably going to be pointed towards, I don't know, probably towards that $12,500 region. Let's see what it would say. I'm doing like a very bad move right there. So if you are familiar with how to do that, just don't judge it too harshly right there. It's actually showing about a little bit, actually into the mid 12,000s. Fair enough. What if we took a more muted response to that? Yeah, taking the breakout point, kind of where we are right now at about 11,850. That would imply a move towards about 12,500-ish region actually, which would be in line with. Do we have anything coming from this region? Yeah. The closing high that we saw in July 2019, which actually was never really retested, so we never got a backfill there. So I would be looking for an initial pullback from there, and then Bitcoin to create a range above 12,000 using the same liquid zone right here that I'm using for a breakout right now to base off of, kind of the same way that Bitcoin's just been, crawling its way upwards and onwards. And the thing with this is that, overall it does look like another leg, just looking at historical volatility percentile, which is still increasing. It's still maintaining a positive slope on the moving average, and above the moving average, and also, if you just draw a regression here, you can kind of see that we are breaking this long-term trend after contracting for 3 months. So is it likely that we're just going to be done right after this first move? I'd say historically not, and this is also further verified, or I shouldn't say further verified because it's not a done deal, but this is probably the best case that I have for a Boolah, another Boolah move to the upside, and it's the weekly RSI. So looking at the weekly RSI, we've gotten back into the bullish control zone for the first time since when? Since April 2019, and then you'll notice that anytime that Bitcoin does get into the bullish control zone on the weekly RSI, that is the start of your long-term Boolah markets. And this one's actually very, 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 very interesting here because it has a lot of the same similar readings that we've seen in the past, in past upwards markets. So what do I mean by that? Well, first and foremost, Bitcoin puts in a base for about 3 months right here, right at between about 8,500 and 10,000 in an ascending triangle. Well, we have the same thing back down around here in early 2019 before this massive explosion. But wait, there's more. Look at the weekly RSI. The weekly RSI got into the bullish control zone for the first fucking time in 2019 in April, at the end of April. Guess where that was as far as price action goes? That was in this area right here. So it was an ascending triangle, boom, massive move to the upside, about $1,000 above a $4,000 number, so that's a pretty fucking big move percentage wise. Then consolidates sideways for a few weeks, and then gets another try to the upside overall. But that first stint into the bullish control zone, that was actually the indication that this was very likely to continue, amongst other things. Looking at the weekly RSI for where we are right now, well, that's kind of what we're doing. But nope, there's more things to talk about here. This is coming under the context of the Bollinger Bands as well. As you can see over here, Bitcoin did close its first weekly doodle above the topside Bollinger Band during that whole thing as well. It's going to have a chance to do the same thing here on spot price action as well. It has already confirmed on CMEs. And if we can take this one step further and apply some fucking physics to it, let's go look at entropy and an entropy right here. Which, I don't want to explain this one again, but if you've been paying attention to the TA Nerd session, then what I want to show right now is that entropy was falling during that first major split to the upside, then went up during the sideways action, and then once the sideways action was done, boom, moves down during the whole move from about 5,500 to realistically like 9,500, 10,000-ish region, which is kind of what Bitcoin was doing out of this base right here. Moves moves up, had a few moves to the upside during the sideways consolidation for the last 3 months above 9,000 essentially, and then it's going to have a chance now to once again move down after obviously it did move down on that first move to the upside, just like it did over here as well. But as you can see, it's been popping up for the last few days, or most this week. While Bitcoin price action essentially just reapproaches the prior high on spot price action. So to me, that would allow it to reset. You could fit in a trend line there as well. I don't think that they essentially work there. Oh, it's Spoon bitches up. Just kidding. She's got like some Miley Cyrus hair going on right now. Jesus Christ, man, she makes me laugh sometimes. She's absolutely hilarious. She's giving me the dirty eye, the stanky eye. Okay, so what thread was I on? Okay, yeah, we were relating the entropy concept to what we're looking at right now. And this is all coming in the context of, again, historical volatility percentile increasing, which as of the last few days has actually been, on a little bit of a downturn. If we go back to that chart for a second, has been on a little bit of a downturn, but that makes sense, seeing as Bitcoin has essentially been, in a sideways consolidation and more or less just working its way up. Once again, confirming what seems to be a higher low on the daily, actually, with yesterday's price action. And remember, this was also a culmination of the 12-hour hidden bullish divergence coming to fruition as well, which was available going all the way back to like July, and that was this tick down here, literally at 9,500. So we have low number 1, low number 2, low number 3, and all getting like lower lows on RSI. So that was also a good indication that we were going to pop back up to the top side of the range. Does not imply a breakout to the top side of the range, but overall, putting all of the puzzle pieces together, I would say that I'm essentially angled towards that region. Look at probabilities very early today, just because our ranges are once again very very smooth here. But let's nail it down first. Closure above 12,000, even on a 4-hour or 2-hour dildo. Yes, I would look for a move towards 12.3, 12.5 region. I don't really have a it's just a $300, $500 move essentially. By the same token, any sort of a 2-hour closure or even 4-hour closure, or I guess that's backwards, below 11.5, and I'd be looking for a move back down to the bottom side of the range, somewhere in the low 11,000s, but nothing more than that. I would be looking for a bounce here first and foremost, if Bitcoin were to break this area. Not to say that it can't, but if it were below 10.9, we'll call it, then yes, I would start to switch around my long-term buys to the downside, looking for this area down here to get hit with bounces along the way. So let's go look at what the probabilities of those specific ranges are, and then compare them as we document this over the week. And this video is already 20 minutes long. Nice. Okay, so to the upside, we'll use 12,000. Be a little bit conservative with that. To the downside, we'll use 10,009. But remember, this is for the long term. If I was using the median of the range at about 11.5, that would drive a short and medium term move to the downside. So looking at this right here, obviously the upside resolution is massively favored from a probabilistic standpoint with regards to historical volatility percentile. Just under 32% probability for that to happen. That's very high. Relatively speaking, especially considering that the downside probability is about 3.90%, so just under 4%. But that's obviously a lot further away. What if we used the short-term, medium-term range to the downside, which I'll have at 11,005. And let's see what that shows. So a lot more even here, just under 32% versus 30.25% to the downside. But that would only imply another continuation drive, I shouldn't say only, but $400, $500, which is very tradable, and I would certainly trade for that. But just perspective wise, it doesn't have the same implications as 10.9 being broken for example. So yeah, let's go down to a 12-hour. I'm curious what that number would show right here. I'm also looking at the slopes of the rings, which are still pointed north, which is going to favor the Bulas. But here's a very interesting thing: on the 12-hour, the probabilities have actually already flipped from those ranges. Obviously, if I use 10.9, it's probably going to be massively under. Or no. It's the upside probability is still favored here. My eyes deceive me, man. I need to get LASIK or some shit, because staring at computer screens all fucking day, probably not very good for you. Feels like the life is getting sucked like a vampire right out of my eyes, man. Oh well, whatever. We are worshippers of the glass, my friends. That's all we are, us humans. Oh, here they come. Get your forks out, bitches. Jesus, man. All right. Well, and daily as well, kind of. Well, actually, the daily's more or less sideways, but let's look at it if we put on future bars here, and yeah, no change actually. So still sideways, but as far as probabilities go, it does favor the upside, and on the 12-hour, it is sloped to the upside as well. So, that's really all that I've say from that perspective. We could go look at momentum oscillators now and see if there's anything, obvious to be aware of. Obviously the 4 hours getting a little bit hot up there. Same thing with the 3 hour. I'm curious what price actually needs to close above in order to maintain the momentum to the upside. Yeah, basically maintains this current uptrend right here. So this needs to be your next higher low. If the short-term momentum is going to remain to the upside, it needs to close above 11,833 on the 3 hour. On the 4 hour, 11,750. So yeah, right, basically using this as your next higher low, stair stepping its way up. Buy hourly needs to close above 11.9 and hourly needs to close above 11.750. Now this would imply that continuation, you want continuation to happen sooner rather than later. Otherwise, I actually would be looking for another move back down to like 11.5, very likely, and then we'll see if that area holds and drives targets lower or not. But looking at 10 hour and 12 hour, I'm curious how these guys are doing. 10 hour is still headed north as well. Will remain to the north side as long as we're above 11,425. So that is, more or less healthy right there, as well as, it does kind of offer up a nice range, but that would essentially imply that, Bitcoin could very easily test the short-term range to the downside at 11,500 or just under it. Looking at 10 hour RSI, looking constructive here, looking good. And 12 hour actually showing momentum to the upside as long as we are above the 21, which would essentially be creating higher lows. So saying that the range is rather big, 11,200 essentially. So as long as we're above there, or momentum will remain to the upside. So short-term timeframes are saying essentially this in combination with the medium-term timeframes, and I'd kind of interpret it like this. If Bitcoin fails to get short-term continuation here, probably in the next day or two, to the upside above 12,000, then very likely we do come back down at the very least to 11,500, and then I'd even extend that probably somewhere in line with the 21 on the 12-hour for right now. But I would say that my main disposition would be favoring the upside, at least for now. If Bitcoin fails to break to the upside, especially before the weekend's over and ends the weekend maybe below 11,500, maybe then we have something new to talk about. But again, perspective of the higher term timeframes trumps all. And this is what your monthly looks like. And, it's difficult to be bearish on something that just got its second highest monthly close ever and also confirmed a continuation of trend, marking this as your low, this is your high, this is your next higher low, and well, it's hard not to get a higher high when your last month already closed on a new high anyways. So continuation of trend is the name of the game. Momentum oscillators seem to agree as well, as monthly Stokes dew point nice and erect to the upside, as well as monthly RSI. Kind of putting a nice little cradle right there, a little bit of an inverted head and shoulders on it as well, and then monthly Joule giving you a hotter long signal ever since April essentially. So a lot of these things working together here, and that does drive my bias, from the higher term time frame perspective, that Bitcoin probably does work its way towards, 13,500, 14,000 more long term. But I really dislike saying that type of shit. I don't think it's appropriate as a trader, and it's not something that I keep in the back of my mind as a trader. It's something that I will talk about as some bullshit analyst on YouTube who you should not be listening to. But it's hard not to kind of think that here. Putting all the pieces together. Let's go look at world markets and see if they're going to allow for another melt up. And what do you know? Nas futures, new all-time highs, motherfuckers. And I still think that our target of 11,400 gets hit. It's just fucking melting up. And as we said, another leg was likely to the upside. That's what we're getting right now. That would be my next sort of medium-term target. It's still kind of far away, but here's how the weekly is going to close. Essentially, it maybe if the weekly sold off into the close and ended below 11,000, then I'd potentially be looking at this as high. But to me, this just looks like continuation to new all-time highs. As we said, this week was very likely. Weekly RSI looks healthy. Weekly Stokes pointed back up north. I mean, this is mostly good stuff. Looking at E-mini futures for SPY, we hit our target at 3,335. and backed off of it as you typically do. But the way that to be clear, it's not been a violent reaction here. I look for a backfill on yesterday's open, maybe down to 3,300, and then probably another try back up to 3,400. I do think that it will try again for the all-time high. And remember, it's that the lower time frames are deceiving here. The monthly looks like this. It closed on new all-time highs. I do feel very strongly that it will retest 3,400 and probably exceed it. Probably going to go for new all-time highs, not just on a closing basis, but on a wick basis as well. And here's the thing: monthly momentum oscillators. This is something that has been working for the last over 10 years now, since November 2009. Anytime that monthly stocks have gotten into the bullish control zone and based off here, these are your major lows for the last over 10 years now. I'm talking back here in 09, then right here in 11, talking right here in 2016 dump, talking more recently right here in 2018 dump, and then obviously this one that we're just building out of right now in 2020. So long term, this has been working, and it works until it don't. And that's really all I have to say about that. I'm not bearish on this, especially as long as it's above 3,300. I have zero reason, or 328. These fucking numbers getting too big, man. Sorry. But as long as it's above there, as long as it's above all major moving types, I'm not bearish at all. It's going to be building divergences, yes, but that it needs to confirm a local high first, and it's not going to be able to, unless if we end today like below 328, it's not going to do that. So yeah. Now there is a lot of economic data coming out today. So if there was going to be a good catalyst for that, it could be driven off those numbers. But let's go check out gold. Looking at gold, weekly. Jesus Christ, man! What a fucking move. I don't really have anything to say off this. We hit our target for the week 2034 and just keeps on going. I want to see how the weekly ends. If the weekly ends anywhere above 2033, I suppose my next algo driven target is going to be like 2140. It's kind of just in a melt up price discovery phase right here. I'm sure a lot of people are trying to short this on the retest of 2011 highs. Not a good idea. And the market's making you pay for it now. So this thing could come back down and even test all the way back down there into the mid 1800s and still be considered long-term healthy. But for right now, the move keeps on melting. And if there's one thing that I've learned, do not call a move over until you at the very least get divergence on a daily, which it's going to be building it, yes, but it still hasn't even confirmed a local high here. So it's probably got another drive as well. We'll see where the weekly ends, but I want to reserve judgment for it now. Link BTC, it looks like it wants to retest the prior high somewhere right around 94,000 satoshis. Looks healthy. Momentum also is nice and erect. Looks good. I'm curious what the dollar pairing looks like. Probably making new all-time highs as it typically does. It's nothing new there. Yeah, and it looks like continuation too. I mean, this is gonna get it. I said earlier this week probably a target of 10 and a half bucks. I didn't think that was going to get hit for like another week or so. It's looking like it wants to give a try there in the next few days. It's also going to be the 2.618 fib extension. I mean, this is just getting kind of crazy here. But yeah, I do think that it gets hit, and then we'll come back to it after that. If it closes the weekly, at that level, probably looking for new all-time highs coming into next week as well. Best chart in cryptocurrency land by far. Very, 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 very impressive shit. What else we want to check out? Tesla still doing fuck all, which is probably bad for the greater market. Apple continuation, powerful. Microsoft continuation, as we said, powerful. So Tesla, I still would look for Tesla breaking below 1430 to kind of denote that the rest of the market is ready to come down a little bit, and which would initiate targets to like the low 1200s and probably beyond. But it's still trading sideways here, kind of within the context of this descending triangle, or I guess we can just redraw it. With the rest of the market being just being fucking vertical, you would expect that anything that can rally will, and the fact is that Tesla can rally. We saw that go all the way from 300 to 2000, but now it's putting in a redistribution pattern right here in the form of a descending triangle, and that is my main disposition. As long as it's below 1535, I do think that this thing is done, and I do think that it will not see this high again for a very long time, maybe if ever. And I know that statement can piss some people off out there, but understand that this is not an emotional thing that I'm saying. It's just it's just a parabolic high. We've seen this a million fucking times. Same thing on Bitcoin in 2017, and probably where Bitcoin ends this next phase, wherever the fuck whenever the fuck that happens, you're gonna see the same thing there as well. And fair enough, as long as it's below this level, this is a major top. Now if it can get above this level 1530, we'll call it, then yeah, I'd say that it's gonna have another try back up here, and with the strength in the rest of the market, it's hard not to think that it probably does end up making new highs if that were to happen. But as long as it's below here, that is something that I'd be very much aware of, just because of the nature of rotations in this market. And Tesla seems to be playing a big role in that. Oh, get your protein shakes out now too. Get swole, motherfuckers. The best thing is to troll Elsa. Okay, what else do we want to look at? Maybe Cardano really quick. Probably not though. Coming down. Yeah, I still think a move towards 1100, and then probably bounce there. Let's go check out Mr. Buteral. I haven't looked at him today actually. And where's he at? 395. Setting up for a nice weekly closure as well. I still think long term headed up towards the mid 400s. Looking at the daily, little bit of signs of exhaustion. Okay, so if there is anything that's suggesting that this run can be done, it's actually Mr. Buteral, and we do have some verifiable things going on right here. Any sort of a daily or 12-hour closure below 374, and I would be looking for this one to come back down rather aggressively to 340-ish region. 340-ish. With a bounce implied around there as well. The daily does have a potential head and shoulders in place on the RSI, and also it does have bearish divergence, which has not been confirmed, but will be confirmed with any sort of a daily total closure, not just below 370, but actually below 385. So a daily closure below 385, or a 4 hour, or we'll call it a 4 hour total closure below 374. So that way we have a little bit of a berth there of a range. Will very likely initiate that, that playing out to the downside. But for perspective on the weekly, if we did close the weekly below 375, that would be problematic. Actually, yes. So I'm going to wait for this one coming into Sunday before really judging it for the long term. But for right now, the 4 hour does look a little bit toppy here. Did get a 4 hour sell signal on the Jewel on the 5th of August. So that was right here on this little move. But we also have a nice range here. So if you are bullish, you're looking at this as an ascending triangle. If you're bearish, you're looking at this as, lost momentum, but you'd be looking at something like this and driving targets probably towards like 440 or 450, as we said. But the way to play it is the same. A 4 hour total closure above 408, looking for continuation of 420 again. Short term, a 4 hour total closure below 385. Warning signals, 4 hour total closure below 373. Big, not warning signals, but continuation to the downside, probably down to like the mid 340s region. Let's go back to Bitcoin really quick. Let's maybe start to wrap this video up because it's already 40 minutes long, and well, and I need to go to the gym mountain. Looking at the 4 hour right here, it looks the ranges that I want to be aware of going into the weekly closure later today for CMEs is 12,000 to the upside. Any sort of a 4 hour total closure above there, I'd look for short term, medium term targets to be hit towards 12.3, 12.5 region. Setting up for continuation overall coming into next week on the higher term timeframes like the weekly, which we still need to see set in stone. By the same token, bearish divergence is forming here, and it's not. It's actually not. This is stair stepping right now. This is still angled towards the upside for now. A 4 hour total closure or 2 hour total closure below 11.5. I'd extend targets to the low 11,000s region right here. Maybe even as low as like 10.8, 10.9, but I don't really switch around my bullish buys for the long term until we break this area, which would drive targets much lower towards back below 10,000 once again with bounces along the way. I think it's a good place to leave off this video. I'm gonna be off for the rest of the day. I would like to wish you well once again. Take care, and until next time.